Hello, crew. It is your waifoox Shiro, and today I will be doing something I have never done today. Well, never done before. So I am going to be doing some ASMR reading, and by popular demand, since a lot of people wanted me to do this, I have decided to actually read one of my favorite books on stream, or on video, rather. That being Bionicle Chronicles 1, Tales of Matoa. So I am going to try to just read the book in a relaxing and calming way for my crew so that you guys can maybe go to sleep or chill out or just have this on in the background while you're doing something. So, yeah, I will begin with the prologue and go through the first 6 chapters. So, prologue The Legend of Mata Nui. Oh, wait, before we begin, we need the blankie. There we go. Blankie. Snow Lily. All right, everybody gather around. Gather around real quick. Now that we've got the bank. Now that we've got the blankie. All right, the legend of Mata Nui. In the time before time, the Great Spirit descended from the heavens, carrying we, the ones called Matoran, to this island paradise. We were separate and without purpose. So the Great Spirit blessed us with 3 virtues: unity, duty, and destiny. We embraced these gifts, and in gratitude we named our island home Mata Nui after the Great Spirit himself. But our happiness was not to last. Mata Nui's brother, Makuta, was jealous of these honors and betrayed him. Makuta cast a spell over Mata Nui, who fell into a deep slumber. Makuta's power dominated the land as fields withered away, sunlight grew cold, and ancient values were forgotten. Still, all hope was not lost. Legends told of 6 mighty heroes, the Toa, who had arrived to save Mata Nui. Time would reveal that these were not simple myths, for the Toa did appear on the shores of the island. They arrived with no memory, no knowledge of one another, but they pledged to defend Mata Nui and its people against the darkness. Toa of fire, Tahu; Onua, Toa of earth; Gali, Toa of water; Lewa, Toa of air; Pohatu, Toa of stone; and Kopaka, Toa of ice. Great warriors with great power, drawn from the very elements themselves. Together they were the 6 heroes with one destiny: to defeat Makuta and save Mata Nui. This is their story. Chapter 1. Tahu, Toa of fire. A beach. He was standing on a sweeping expanse of sand sloping gently down to the sea. He gazed out at the ocean. He saw waves breaking over a coral reef. Beyond that there was nothing but water, stretching to an unbroken horizon. Where am I? He thought, his mind a haze of memories and dreams. Who am I? Tahu. The word? A name? Floated through his mind. It seemed to fit, to make sense of somehow, but little else did. Tahu shook his head in frustration. Why couldn't he remember more? How had he come to this place, and why? He glanced toward a polished canister that had brought him here. Near it, he saw several red components lying in the sand. Two turned out to be blades, shaped into the form of leaping red flames. They fitted together into a sword, the handle sitting comfortably in his clawed hand. But when he swung the sword, it felt heavy and awkward. He scowled. Useless hunk of metal, he muttered, jabbing the blade into the sand. Then he noticed the mask. It stared at him with gaping eye holes, its surface catching the sunlight so that it appeared to come alive in his hands. Taking a deep breath, Tahu lifted the mask to his face. A surge of power coursed through him. Yes, this was more like it. Tahu grabbed the flame sword and lifted it up. This time, to his surprise, the blade was glowing with crimson fire. When he swung the sword, it sizzled through the air, trailing sparks in its wake. Yes, Tahu said with a grim satisfaction. Now we're getting somewhere. But was he? He let the sword fall to his side, overwhelmed by despair. Why was he here? What was he supposed to do now? Why can't I remember? He howled, swinging his sword over his head. A bolt of fiery energy shot forth, erupting into the sky like a volcano. Sparks showered down onto the beach, but Tahu didn't feel their heat. Power. I have such power, he thought with wonder. The power of fire, of heat and flame. But where does it come from? And what for? More questions, and still he had no answers. Not knowing made him shake with frustration and rage. It made him want to turn his sword against the earth, the sky, the beach, the very world itself. It was tempting, so tempting, to lose himself in the chaos, to strike out with no thought for past, future, or anything else. Tahu took a deep breath. No, he couldn't allow himself to give in. Somehow he knew that, just as he'd known his name. Okay, he told himself. The knowing will come. At least, I hope it will. Chapter 2. Lewa, Toa of Air. This sturdy cling twiner will do, I expect. The bright green figure murmured to himself, stretching to grab a thick vine that was hanging down in front of him. He glanced into the canyon below, then shook his head and grinned. No second think, just go. With that, he leapt off the tree branch overhanging the canyon. He swung himself halfway across, then let go. Momentum carried him in a graceful arc over and past the gorge. He laughed with delight as he landed cleanly on a nearby tree. Now that was fun, he exclaimed. He hadn't been sure that he could make such a leap. But now he knew at least one thing. The air was his friend. He didn't know much else. He knew his name was Lewa. At least he thought so. He liked the name. Sounded strong and mysterious. Lewa, mystery king of the know-nothingness, he thought with a smile. Yep, that's me. He glanced down at himself, at his strong limbs, the color of the jungle leaves. In one hand he carried an axe-like blade, perfect for slicing through thick underbrush or twining foliage. Though he couldn't see it, he knew his bright green mask swept back like a streamlined shade, perfect for cutting through the air. His smile faded as his mind flashed back to his dreams. Was that what they were? Dreams? He hoped so. For they had been dark and chaotic and filled him with fear. Never mind, he muttered. Time enough for dark thought later. It's time for some answer finding. Lewa immediately found himself drawn to the lush, dripping jungle. Now that he was here, he felt at home. As he reached the edge of the large stand of willow trees, Lewa jumped onto a slender branch. The motion flung something out of a nest of feathers and twigs further along the branch. He cried out in dismay, realizing that he had ejected a baby Tahu out of its nest. Without thought, he flung one arm upward through the air in the direction of a falling chick. Up you go, he cried. For a moment he thought the baby bird was flying away, but then he realized the truth. No, not flying. The wind had caught it and carried it aloft. Leaping across to a closer branch, Lewa leapt up and caught the chickie gently in one hand. He placed it carefully back into its nest. Now what kind of happy luck was that? He murmured. Or was it? Struck with a sudden impulse, he flung up his arm. Once again, a gust of wind swooped up from below with a swirl of leaves. It was me, Lewa braved in amazement. I did it. The wind answers to me. Chapter 3. Onua, Toa of Earth. Dig, pull, scrape, push. Dig, pull, scrape, push. Onua fell into a comfortable rhythm as he scooped out a new tunnel. He was happy to be underground. But still, he felt uneasy. Aside from his name, he didn't know anything about who or where he was. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was somehow missing something, missing a piece of himself. He pushed that worry aside, though. There was no sense in wasting energy or fretting over what he couldn't control. All he could do was control what he could, like the digging. Onua powered his huge hand forward through a rocky section of the tunnel wall. It met empty air instead of rock and earth. Interesting. Pushing through this shower of stones and clay, Onua found himself in a large cavern in the center of a tower of rock that ended in a flat stone platform. Atop it, light stones glowed. So there are others underground, Onua thought. Perhaps they will have some answers for me. He spotted a tunnel in the far wall of the cavern and followed it. Turning a corner, he startled to see a familiar-looking figure at the center of a large mural. "Is that me?" he whispered, reaching out to touch the image. It portrayed a powerful-looking figure with a wedge-shaped mask and large clawed hands. The figure was standing among 5 other similar figures. As Onua touched the lines of the carving, he felt a strange vibration in the wall. Stepping forward, he put his head to it, listening intently. Thumka, 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 thumka. It was a steady rhythm. Onua had no idea what it meant, but he planned to find out. With one last glance at the picture of himself, he turned and continued down the tunnel, keeping one hand on the wall to follow the vibrations. The pulsing grew stronger and stronger, and with the next twist of the tunnel, Onua found what he was looking for. Another enormous cavern lay before him, lit by more lightstone platforms. Dozens of stone columns stretched up to the high ceiling. Between these columns were paths made of cobblestones set into the earthen floor. Stone benches stood beside the paths, and a small clear stream trickled through the cavern. It must be a park of some sort, Onua realized. But down here? Why? And how? Stepping forward, he saw that the little stream emptied into a still, round pool lined with pebbles. In the center, reddish-brown gemstones spelled out a word. Onukoro. Onukoro? What did that mean? What kind of connection did it have to his name? Before he had any time to ponder this, Onua saw a small figure hurrying across the park. Onua leapt forward. "You there," he called. "Hey, hello!" The figure glanced over his shoulder, then stopped short. "Oh!" he exclaimed. "Oh, oh!" Onua frowned. Perhaps this being didn't speak the same language as he did. He cleared his throat. "Hello?" he said slowly and clearly as he could. "Me, Onua." He put a hand to his chest, then pointed to the other. "Who? You. Do you understand me?" "Oh, yes," the small figure cried, bending into a short, hurried bow. "Oh, Toa Onua, we have been waiting for you such a long time. Come, please. Turaga Wanua will want to see you right away." Confused, Onua followed him. "You know my name," he said, "but I don't know yours." "Oh, forgive my rudeness, Toa. My name is Onipu. I am a Matoran of this village of Onukoro." Onipu led the way through a series of tunnels and caverns. Soon they reached another large cavern. On each wall, a series of carved-out dwellings climbed nearly to the ceiling. "Wait here, please, Toa," Onipu said, gesturing towards the large stone bench near the fountain. "I will fetch the Turaga." Onua nodded, and the Matoran rushed off. Onua took the opportunity to look around. At the center of the caravan was a fountain filled with crystal clear water. A sculpture arose from the pool, sprouting water out of several spots. Onua blinked. Was he going crazy? Or did this sculpture look an awful lot like him? He was still staring at the fountain when he heard someone behind him. Turning, he saw a figure much like Onipu, but a bit taller and with a different mask. The eyes behind that mask held patience, caution, and great wisdom. "I am Onua, Turaga of this village," the stranger said, bowing. "Welcome, Toa Onua. We have been waiting for you." "Yes, so I've heard," Onua replied. "I've been awaiting some clue about who I am and what I'm doing here." "The legend said that would be the case," Onua said. "It was said that the Toa, when they arrived, would remember very little." "You said when they arrived," Onua said. Are there others like me?" Onua nodded. "There are 5 others," he said. "Each of you draws his power from a different element. Yours is the earth itself. Your purpose is to use that power to face and to fight a mighty evil, Makuta." Though Onua wasn't sure why, the name sent a chill through him. An image floated in his mind: dark, empty eyes and an even darker face shrouded with gray smoke. "Makuta?" Onua repeated as the image floated away. "Who or what is this Makuta?" "He is the darkness, the essence of chaos, and emptiness, and fear. The spirit of destruction." Onua replied in a trembling voice. "It is said that only the Toa have the power to stand against him." "It is said?" Onua asked. "You don't sound too certain about our success." Onua shook his head sadly. "It serves no purpose to be false, for the earth cannot be deceived," he said. "Nothing about your quest is certain, except that it is your duty to try. That is all any of us can do in this life." "I will do what I can," he promised solemnly. "But first you must tell me all you know of these powers that you say I have." "Of course, Toa," Onua said, "for that is my duty. First, you should know that the power itself comes from within you. But it is focused through your mask, the Pakari, the great mask of strength." My mask?" Onua touched his hand to his face, remembering the surge of strength and power when he'd first put it on. Onua nodded somberly. "The Pakari gives you power. Great power," he said. "But one mask will not be enough." Chapter 4. Gali, Toa of Water. The waters lifted her, carrying her along in a soft current of warmth. She didn't know who or where she was, but she knew she belonged here, in the calm, cool blue of the sea. That was perhaps the only thing she knew for sure. That, and her name was Gali. "But I can't just float here forever," she reminded herself. "I have things to do. If only I knew what they were." She had no certain memories, but many uncertain ones. Fragments of thought, images. There was urgency in those fragments, though some of them were hinted at peace as well. Especially one, an endless sea of calm waters, surrounding an island, embracing it, and soothing its ills. Gali kicked swiftly forward with her flipper-like feet. Her hooked arms cut through the water, and the ridged edges of her blue mask sent bubbly ripples out to the sides as she swam. The sea was full of life, but Gali felt strangely alone. As she swam, she felt a shivering tremor radiate through the water. A brightly colored eel raced past her. Several schools of fish followed it. Gali paused and started in the direction the creatures had come. What frightened them? More fish rushed past her in panic, along with several crabs and snails and even a small shark. Gali pushed forward, swimming against the tide of the fleeing sea creatures. A large coral reef blocked her view of whatever lay beyond. As she swam around it, Gali saw a gigantic creature burrowing towards her. The water churned around its vicious-looking snout, and its powerful arms pulled it forward towards Gali faster and faster. Gali gasped. She had no idea what the monster might be, but she could see why the other creatures had fled. The predator wore a dingy-looking, ugly mask over its triangular face, and its gleaming red eyes were ruthless and savage. There was no time to outswim this huge creature. It was already too close. For a fraction of a second, Gali thought of using the coral reef for protection, but she couldn't stand to imagine the creature crashing through the delicate structures, destroying the living coral. Gali let her instincts take over. Pushing off the coral, she bulleted through the water off to one side. She then shot towards the surface. She broke the surface and extended her arms, not sure why she was doing so. She felt the waters gather to her response and respond to her call. As the giant sea creature burst to the surface and shot a short distance away, an enormous wave formed around her. Her vicious pursuer leapt forward, but the tidal wave rocked Gali away towards the shore, faster than any creature could swim. Gali smiled. The water carried her to safety. So this is what I am meant to do, she thought. I am here to command the seas. But for what purpose? A few minutes later, Gali shook herself dry as she stepped out of the surf and onto the beach. She stood there for a moment, looking around, strangely reluctant to leave the water. She glanced across the beach. A thick, dripping jungle began where the sands led off. The humidity of the place reached out, beckoning to her, and she could not resist its call. Chapter 5. Pohatu, Toa of Stone. Pohatu glanced over his shoulder. On the wall that surrounded the village of Pokoro, dozens of Matoran were gathered, watching him go. Grinning, Pohatu shaded his eyes with one hand and gave them a quick wave with the other. The villagers waved back and cheered. Well, that was an interesting visit, Pohatu said aloud to himself as he turned away again. It's not every day you find out you're the Toa of Stone. He almost tripped on a protruding stone in the path. Glancing down, he saw 3 words spelled out in the cobblestones beneath his feet. Unity, duty, destiny. Now where have I heard those before? Pohatu murmured with a chuckle. The Turaga of Pokoro had told him many things. The strange, dark history of this island of Mata Nui. The mysterious masks that were hidden throughout the island. And best of all, that there were 5 other Toa with powers as strong as his own. As the village elder spoke, 3 words had come up again and again. Unity, duty, destiny. These 3 concepts had given the Matoran a purpose, something to strive for, always. Now it was time to see what the rest of this island had in store. Turaga Onua said that this mask I wear is the Kanohi Kakama, the great mask of speed, Pohatu thought. Maybe it's time to put it to the test. He hesitated, wondering if it was wise to experiment with his powers when he still knew so little of how they worked. But what was the worst that could happen? Gathering his energy, Pohatu directed his gaze towards the top of Mount Ihu and ran. The desert landscape passed in a yellowish blur, all details obscured by Matoa's immense speed. After a moment, the yellowish blur shifted into a brown one, punctuated by flashes of green, and then quickly grew paler until all Pohatu could see around him was white. He slowed to a stop. He was standing in a snowdrift overlooking the frozen lake. The steep, icy slopes of Mount Ihu rose above him. "Outrageous," he said breathlessly, a smile spraying behind his mask. "Now that's what I call speed." Leaving the frozen lake behind, he stared up at the mountainside. The Turaga had told him the main temple, the Kini Nui, was in the exact center of the island on the far side of Mount Ihu. It seemed as likely as a place as any to look for the other Toa. He turned around to check his progress. He caught a glimpse of a movement somewhere further up the slopes. A bird? Not unless this island grows its birds awfully big. He muttered, staring at the silver and white figure gliding gracefully down a high mountain slope, powdery snow flying up in an arc behind his feet. No, there was only one thing it could be. Another Toa. His heart pounding, Pohatu leapt up the slope, gathering speed, careful not to go too fast. He didn't want to overshoot his target. He lost sight of his quarry for a few minutes as he trumped through the narrow valley. Grumbling up at the snowdrifts, which had come up to his waist in some spots, he glanced upward. At the top of the valley, a rocky bluff hid the higher slopes from his view. He clambered up towards it, finally leaving the deeper snowdrifts behind. Brushing the snow from his body, Pohatu gazed at the precipice standing in his way. If he had judged the distance right, the other Toa should be on the snowy slope, just on the other side. "Time for a shortcut," Pohatu murmured. "I don't want him to start skiing down that hill and get away from me. Besides, I might as well start getting used to this power of mine." Taking a deep breath, he hunched his shoulders and raked straight at the solid stone. Rama 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 Rama. Chapter 6. Kopaka, Toa of Ice. Rama 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 Rama. Crash! Kopaka's ice blade was up and ready as the rocky bluff exploded. There was no time to dodge the enormous boulders that rained down around him. "Watch out!" a voice cried from somewhere in the storm of stone. Kopaka lifted his shield, protecting himself as best as he could. When the eruption of stone stopped, he found himself trapped between several huge boulders. Glancing up, he saw a figure about his own size gazing down at him, resting his weight on one of the large stones. The stranger wore a bronze-colored mask, and the eyes behind it were concerned and a bit sheepish. "Sorry about that," the stranger said. "I was practicing. Are you all right?" "I would be," Kopaka returned icily, "if you weren't standing on me." The stranger jumped back a few steps, then stretched out his arms. "Let me help you out." Kopaka was already pointing his ice blade at the nearest rock. He was annoyed that the stranger's sudden appearance had taken him by surprise, caught him with his defenses down, as it were. He would not make that mistake again. "Thank you, I don't need your help," he said. Focusing his energy, he channeled it through the blade. A thrill ran through him as the rock around him froze solid, becoming brittle and glassy. The other figure was still watching him anxiously. "Let me do it," he urged as Kopaka lifted his blade again. "It'll be faster." Kopaka frowned, already tired of the stranger's pushy chatter. "I said I can do it myself." Bringing the blade down, he smashed the icy boulder to smithereens, freeing himself. The stranger looked impressed for a moment. Then he shrugged. Yeah, well, you missed one, he said, kicking at the one remaining boulder. Kopaka blinked as the huge stone went sailing off towards the horizon. Whoever this stranger was, he was strong. Incredibly strong. Kopaka supposed that meant he had to be one of the other Toa that Turaga Nuju had mentioned. But Kopaka had no interest in meeting the other Toa. Turning away from the stranger, he continued on his way. The Matoran had told him there was a mask at the top of the mountain. The place of far-seeing, they had called it. He meant to find that mask as soon as possible. But the stranger didn't get the message. Hey, he called. Wait, are you a Toa? I've been looking for you. I'm Pohatu, the Toa of Stone. Kopaka considered not answering. Maybe if he ignored this annoying Pohatu, he would go away. But that seemed unlikely. Kopaka, he said briskly. Ice. And if you don't mind, I'm in the middle of something. See you later. He bent and effortlessly rode a slight dip in the ground, his feet sliding smoothly over the ice. He soon left Pohatu behind. But it turned out that the newcomer was not to be abandoned so easily. Wait, he called again, scrambling up the hill. Listen, I have a feeling we're here for the same reason. Why not team up? It might make things faster. And easier. I work alone. By choice? Pohatu returned quickly. Or just because no one can stand you? Kopaka almost smiled at that. Almost. Miss Evertoa was irritating and far too chatty, but he also seemed to be quick-witted, and he was certainly strong. Perhaps he could come in handy after all, especially if they came across another one of those huge, vicious creatures the Matoran called Rahi. All right, Kopaka said after a long moment. Come along. After all, I might need a mountain moved, or the island lifted. Pohatu chuckled. Okay, he said. So, where are we going anyway? Should we start looking for masks? Or seek out the other Toa first? Kopaka pointed towards a peak, rising just above them. Then he climbed on, not bothering to check on whether Pohatu was following. A few minutes later, the two of them were standing at the peak of the mountain. Kopaka immediately spotted a mask lying in the snow. Pohatu saw it too. Good work, brother, he said. Go ahead. Claim your prize. Kopaka nodded. The new Kanoki looked gray and lifeless in the snow. Though it was the exact same size of his own mask, it was shaped differently. The helmet-like form with angled eyes and 3 slashes in each cheek. The Kanoki how? Kopaka thought, remembering what the Turaga had told him. The great mask of shielding. Kopaka bent to pick up the mask. He stared at it for a moment, then carefully placed it over his own mask. Immediately, a strange feeling overwhelmed him, as if a cushion of strength had settled around him, protecting him from all harm. But what of his other powers? Did this new mask affect them? Kopaka called forth the power of his original mask, which also gave him the ability to see through stone and snow to what lay beneath. Glancing down at the ground, he saw the icy snow, then the raw, cold dirt underneath, and below that a layer of rock and cross-cut with veins of minerals. The powers of the mask and vision are still mine to use. He was pleased. He turned his gaze towards the south, his X-ray vision cut straight through the craggy bluffs to several bright spots of color far below in the foothills. Then he sighed. For a moment he was tempted to turn away, to ignore what he had seen. but he realized he might as well face up to the inevitable. "We have to go," he told Pohatu abruptly, heeding the thought of what was to come, but knowing there was no avoiding it. Now. Why? No questions. Kopaka was tired of all the conversation. "Just follow me." The two of them headed down the mountain, Pohatu skidding and slipping on the icy slopes. Kopaka forced himself to move slowly so the other Tewa could keep up. They were about halfway down when there was an earth-shattering roar from somewhere just ahead of them. "Uh-oh," Pohatu said. "I don't like the sound of that." Before Kopaka could respond, a massive creature burst through the snowbank a short distance below where the Toa were standing, sending a shower of snow and ice shards out on all the sides. Kopaka shielded his eyes, squinting at the enormous, snorting, puffing beast as it skidded to a stop just a few lengths away. "Isn't this what you were leading us towards?" Pohatu shouted, sounding dismay. "No," Kopaka said grimly. The creature was like something out of a nightmare. Its red eyes gleamed with hate, and it pawed at the snowy ground with its hoof-like feet. Puffs of steam blowing from its nostrils, twin horns twisted out on the sides of its enormous head. "Phew," Pohatu said. "Do you think this big fellow is an ally or an enemy?" Kopaka glanced at him, startled, and then realized the other Toa was kidding. He rolled his eyes, not amused. "Come on," he said. "I think we'd better—" At that moment, the shittiest creature let out another thunderous bellow, and then charged straight at them. "Run!" Pohatu finished for him. The two Toa turned and sprinted back up the slope. At least Kopaka sprinted. Pohatu tried to run, but lost his footing on the ice and went down, struggling to keep himself from sliding right back under the beast's charging hooves. Kopaka skid into a stop, realizing the other Toa was in trouble. Big, charging, snorting trouble. Letting out a sigh, he skied back down the hill. "No, Kopaka, don't. It's too dangerous." "Don't be ridiculous." Kopaka waved his arms and shouted, trying to distract the enemy. The creature slowed, glancing from one Toa to the other, confused. Then it snorted and bellowed and returned its full attention to the fallen Pohatu, who was just now climbing unsteadily to his feet. Time for Plan B, Kopaka thought, looking around for new ideas. They were standing on an open field that often offered little in the way of hiding places. To one side, the ground dropped away sharply into a deep, icy ravine. Kopaka paused, his mind clicking into gear. If only he could get the beast to change directions. There was just one problem. The creature was almost on top of Pohatu. 2 more leaps, and its horns would be buried in the other Toa's chest. There would be no time to explain. He'll just have to go with it, Kopaka told himself grimly, already pushing off smoothly and gathering speed as he skied downhill towards the fallen Toa. If he doesn't, well, there's no sense worrying. "Here goes nothing," he muttered. Snort! The beast made another leap forward. It lowered its head, aiming its horns directly at Pohatu. Pohatu took a step backwards, almost falling again as his foot hit an icy patch. Meanwhile, Kopaka skied toward him, gathering speed. This would be close. "Heads up!" he shouted, and arms out. Pohatu looked startled, but flung his arms out to the sides. Just as the creature lunged forward, snorting eagerly, Kopaka whizzed past and grabbed Pohatu around the chest. "Oof!" Pohatu grunted as Kopaka yanked him out of the beast's path. Just as it lunged forward, it buried its horns in the snow. Kopaka wobbled, nearly losing his balance. "I have to straighten out," he thought. "Otherwise, we'll never make it." Behind him, he could already hear the beast roaring with anger and charging after them. "Where are we going? Pohatu panted. To Kopaka's relief, the toe of stone was hanging loosely in his arms, not struggling against his grip or trying to free himself. Kopaka couldn't have replied even if he'd wanted to. He was too busy willing his feet to obey him, in a desperate attempt to control the angle of their speed downhill. It worked, just 3 or 4 lengths from the ravine now. His feet finally settled smoothly into an upright position on the icy snow. He bent as low as he could without dragging Pohatu's legs in the snow. Now there was no turning back. "Hey!" Pohatu cried, suddenly looking forward and seeing the chasm directly in front of them. "What are you—" "Ah!" Kopaka held his breath as he felt his feet leave the cold, solid surface of the ice. He held on tightly to Pohatu as they flew up, and over the canyon. Pohatu was still screaming, but Kopaka did not let out his breath until he felt his feet slam down again on the far side of the gorge. He teetered and threw himself to the side, allowing himself and Pohatu to pitch face first into the snow. Why did you do that?" Pohatu cried, spitting out a mouthful of snow. "You could have gotten us killed." "That's why." Kopaka had already turned to stare back at the ravine. He pointed and Pohatu turned to look just in time to see the snorting, squealing creature skid down the ice and tumble head over hooves into the depths of the fissure. A furious bellow drifted up towards them. "Oh." Pohatu was silent for a moment. He grinned weakly. Thanks. I guess I owe you one, brother." Kopaka nodded. Then he crawled forward to the edge of the ravine, glancing down. The beast was still bellowing and struggling at the bottom, digging its hooves into the ice as it started to climb. "It will be able to climb out of there as soon enough," Kopaka observed, watching as the beast leapt to an icy ledge. "Not if I have anything to say about it," Pohatu replied. He climbed to his feet and strode towards the rocky cliff nearby. "You might want to step aside," he called over his shoulder as he began climbing hand over hand up a sheer rock cliff. Kopaka moved a little further down the slope, keeping an eye on the edge of the gulch. The beast could come charging out of there at any moment. "Yee-haw!" Pohatu cried, drawing his foot back and then kicking a huge chunk of the rock face. The solid stone cracked instantly, and the enormous boulder flew downward towards the fissure, disappearing over its edge. Pohatu moved on to another section of the bluff. Once again, he aimed a mighty kick, sending a chunk of stone across the snowy ground straight into the gorge. Kopaka watched with grudging admiration as Pohatu repeated the movement again and again. "Okay, this is too slow," Pohatu exclaimed. "Let's try something else." What was he up to now? Kopaka had no idea. A second later, Pohatu brought both fists down on a rock, and the cliff exploded into 1,000 shards of stone. Remembering his first meeting with Pohatu, Kopaka covered his head with his shield. A few pebbles bounced off it, but the bulk of the explosion of stone showered down into the ravine with a deafening roar. "Whoa!" Pohatu shouted gleefully after the noise had subsided. "That was so cool! I mean, I was pretty sure it would work, but still." While he waited for the other Toa to rejoin him, Kopaka stepped forward and peered again over the edge of the chasm. The creature was buried up to its horns in the rocky mess that now filled nearly half the canyon. Hearing Pohatu hurrying up beside him, Kopaka turned. "Nice work," he said. "It will be able to escape, but not for a long while." Pohatu glanced one more time at the huge beast trap below them. "That was close, though. What is that thing, anyway?" "Rahi," Kopaka told him. already turning to lead the way down the snowy slope. That's what the Turaga said they're called. There are many species, all shapes and sizes. They're not very friendly. No kidding. Both Toa were silent for a few minutes as they climbed down and skidded down the mountain, each buried in his own thoughts. Finally, Pohatu spoke again. "So what did you see up there, anyway?" he asked. "From the peak, I mean." This time, Kopaka decided to answer. "Strangers," he replied. "Beings of great power." They came to the top of a steep hill, standing in an open area below. 4 bright spots stood out against the drab background of stone and dirt. 4 figures. One a bright burning red, another blue as the sea, a third black as a starless midnight, and the final one, the same bright green as the leaves on the trees. Kopaka stared down at them. The other Toa. It had to be them. "But are they allies?" he murmured. "Or enemies?" And with that, we finish our reading for the day. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to tune in next time for more reading of Bionicle Chronicles 1, Tales of Matoa. Feel free to curl up next to your goth tomboy waifoox next time, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.